The first light of morning was still a soft gray promise in the sky when the girl's front door clicked open. In the quiet suburb where most houses were dark and curtains drawn, this was the signal that the day was beginning, at least for one household. 10-year-old Mia stepped onto the porch, the cool air making her hug her sweater a little tighter. Right behind her, a shadow moving with a gentle grace, came Sam. Sam was a dog, or so everyone believed. He was a medium-sized fellow, with fur the color of toasted wheat and deep, thoughtful eyes. He wasn't any breed you could name, just a friendly-looking mix who seemed perfectly suited for a child. Without a word, Mia closed the door softly behind them, and they set off, their footsteps a soft rhythm on the sidewalk. Their routine was as regular as the sunrise. Down Elm Street they went, past the house with the perfectly trimmed rose bush, past the one with the old, friendly sedan, always in the driveway. Mia walked with purpose, her small backpack sometimes bouncing gently. She didn't look at her phone or listen to music. Her attention was mostly on Sam, but also on the sleeping world around them. Mr. Henderson, a retired man with a kind face etched by years of smiles, saw them from his porch every single morning. He'd be there with his steaming mug of coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. He'd raise his cup in a silent greeting. Mia would sometimes offer a small, shy wave, but never stopped. Sam would give his tail a single respectful wag in Mr. Henderson's direction before trotting on. The old man liked this. He liked the consistency. In a world that often felt too fast and too loud, the sight of the quiet girl and her well-behaved dog was a comfort. Further down the street, a young mother would be loading bags into her car, always in a hurry. She'd pause for a second, keys in hand, and watch them pass. She thought about how responsible the girl was, walking her dog so early without being asked. She made a mental note to remind her own son about responsibility before getting swept back into her busy day. The heart of their walk was the park. It was a green, peaceful place with a looping path. They never went to the playground or the open field. They stuck to the perimeter path, where the trees were thick and the world felt a little more private. Here, Mia would sometimes stop. She'd look at a particular tree or a patch of flowers, and Sam would sit beside her, leaning his warm weight against her leg. They would stand there for a minute, just listening to the birds begin their morning songs. It looked like a girl sharing a quiet moment with her pet. No one thought much of it. The mailman, who started his route early, noticed a different detail. He saw them every day on his way to the sorting office. "That's a well-trained dog," he once remarked to a fellow neighbor. "Never on a leash. Stays right by her side, like he's glued there." And it was true. Sam never ran off to chase a squirrel. He never pulled ahead or lagged behind. He matched Mia's pace exactly, his head often turning to look at her, as if checking in. It was a bond that seemed deeper than most. Mia's life at home was quiet. She lived with her father, a kind but tired-looking man who worked as a librarian. Her mother wasn't around, a fact the neighborhood understood in a vague, unspoken way. The walks with Sam seemed to be Mia's special time, a part of her day that belonged just to her. Her father would watch them from the window sometimes, a complex look of sadness and love on his face, before turning to get ready for his own day. One morning, something small and unusual happened. As they passed the house with the rose bushes, a small, fluttering sound came from the bush. A young robin, learning to fly, had tumbled into a thorny thicket and was stuck, chirping in panic. Mia stopped. She knelt down, not too close. Sam sat immediately, his body very still. Mia didn't reach in. She just looked, her brow furrowed in concentration. She whispered something too low to hear. Sam let out a soft, almost musical whine. The bird, which had been threshing, suddenly calmed. It cocked its head, hopped once, and then found a clear path to flutter up to a low branch. Mia stood up, gave a little nod, and they continued their walk. If anyone had seen, they might have thought it was a lucky coincidence, a moment of simple kindness. The rhythm of their mornings built a picture in the neighborhood's mind. She was the nice, quiet girl with the sweet dog, the one who did her duty without complaint. The walks were so normal, so everyday, that they became almost invisible. People expected to see them. The sight was as much a part of the morning as the newspaper on the driveway, or the smell of breakfast dot. But within that normalcy, there were tiny threads that didn't quite match the pattern. The way Sam's eyes sometimes seemed to catch the light, not like an animal's, but like a polished stone. The way lost things in the neighborhood, a child's toy left in the park, a set of keys dropped in the grass often, seemed to find their way to the lost and found bench the day after Mia and Sam walked by. People would laugh it off. Lucky streak, they'd say. Or, that dog has a good nose. Mia herself never gave anything away. At school, she was a good student, quiet but not shy, with a small circle of friends. She never talked about Sam in any special way. If asked, she'd just say, "He's my dog. We like our walks." It was the simple, solid truth that covered a much more complicated reality. As the seasons changed from spring to summer, the morning walks continued. The girl and her dog, a moving picture of simple, everyday life. No one had any reason to look closer. No one had any idea that this peaceful ritual was not just a walk, but a quiet, daily mission. And Sam, the gentle, leash-less dog walking so faithfully by the little girl's side, was the most incredible. Secret the street had ever known, hiding in plain sight with every soft step they took on the dewy sidewalk. The whisper started slowly, like a few stray leaves rustling before a storm. The perfect, predictable picture of the girl and her dog began to show a tiny crack. And it all began with a boy and his broken drone. The boy, a curious kid with a head full of ideas about becoming an inventor, had a prized possession, a sleek black drone. He'd been flying it behind the park, trying to capture video of a hawk's nest, when a sudden gust of wind sent it spinning into the thick woods. He searched for hours, but found nothing. The drone was gone, its battery surely dead, lost in a tangle of underbrush and leaves. He was heartbroken. 2 days later, still upset, he decided to look again at dawn, hoping the morning light might help. That's when he saw them. The girl, Mia, and her dog, Sam, were standing perfectly still by the big old oak tree at the edge of the woods. This was unusual. They were off their normal path. The boy ducked behind a bush, watching. The girl wasn't playing. She had one hand resting on Sam's head. Her eyes were closed. The dog was sitting like a statue, facing the dark woods. The boy felt a strange silence fall over the spot, like the birds had stopped singing just for them. Then Sam's ears twitched. He let out a low, soft hum, a sound the boy had never heard a dog make. It wasn't a growl or a whine. It was more like the vibration of a phone on a wooden table. And then the impossible happened. From deep within the bushes, something came trotting out. It wasn't an animal. It was his drone. It moved awkwardly, bumping over sticks and roots, but it was moving under its own power straight toward the girl. Its little red power light, which had been dead for days, was glowing a faint, steady green. It nudged against the girl's leg, then tipped over onto the grass, the light flickering out. The girl opened her eyes. She patted Sam, picked up the drone, brushed off the leaves, and placed it gently on the roots of the oak tree. Then, without a glance around, she and Sam turned and walked back onto their normal path, continuing their morning ritual as if nothing had happened. The boy's mind was racing. He ran over and grabbed his drone. It was cool to the touch, not warm like it had been running. It was perfectly clean, except for a few fresh scratches. But how? He stood there, utterly confused, watching the girl's small figure disappear down the path. He told his parents at breakfast. It followed her out like a puppy. He said, his father chuckled. Must have had a little bit of juice left, son. A funny coincidence. The boy didn't think it was funny. And he definitely didn't think it was a coincidence. The second thread in the tapestry came from the elderly woman who lived in the cottage with the wild, beautiful garden. She loved her cat, a fluffy white thing, more than anything. One evening, the cat slipped out and didn't come back. The woman was worried sick, calling and searching all night. Early the next morning, anxious and unable to sleep, she was at her window when she saw Mia and Sam walk by. They paused right at her garden gate. The girl looked toward the house, her expression soft with what seemed like understanding. She whispered something to Sam. The dog walked to the edge of the garden, sniffed the air, and gave a short, quiet bark that sounded almost like a chime. Not 5 minutes later, as the woman was putting on her coat to search again, her cat came strolling around the side of the house. It wasn't scared or dirty. It was perfectly clean, its fur smooth, purring loudly. It rubbed against her legs as if it had just been on a pleasant little stroll. The woman scooped it up, relieved and puzzled. She remembered the girl and the dog pausing. A strange feeling settled in her stomach. She mentioned it to a friend at the community garden a few days later. It was the oddest thing. Right after that Wilson girl and her dog stopped by, my Whiskers came home, happy as can be. The friend nodded slowly. You know, my little one lost his favorite action figure in the park last week. We turned the place upside down. The next day, after the morning walkers came through, it was just sitting right in the middle of the picnic table, clean as a whistle. I thought the older boys found it and were playing a trick. Piece by piece, small stories began to connect. The man who found his missing wallet on his front step after complaining loudly at the mailbox about losing it the day Mia walked by. The family whose lost puppy was found sitting calmly by the park entrance, waiting as Mia and Sam approached. The neighborhood had a quiet network of chats over fences and in grocery store aisles. The stories were shared not with alarm, but with a growing sense of wonder. No one wanted to accuse the sweet, quiet girl of anything strange. Instead, a new kind of attention settled on her morning walks. People began to watch more closely from their windows. Mr. Henderson on his porch noticed how Sam never, ever acted like a normal dog. He didn't chase birds. He didn't sniff fire hydrants with urgent interest. His focus was always on Mia, or on the space around them, scanning in a slow, steady way. The busy mother, now watching more intently, saw how Mia sometimes stopped and just listened, her head tilted, as if hearing a frequency no one else could. The stories were never about big, flashy miracles. They were about small restorations, little pieces of a peaceful life being quietly put back in place. A lost item returned. A pet brought home. A moment of calm where there was panic. People started to feel a subtle change in the air on the days following Mia's walks. The air felt cleaner, the bird song a little brighter, the weight of a bad mood a little lighter. They couldn't prove it. They wouldn't even say it out loud. But they felt it. Mia, for her part, gave nothing away. She continued her walks with the same quiet dedication. If she noticed the longer glances, the softer smiles from her neighbors, she didn't show it. She and Sam were a team on a mission, a secret she kept tucked close to her heart, hidden in the plain sight of the everyday. The crack in the normal world had appeared. The neighborhood was now peeking through it, unsure of what they were seeing, but certain that the girl with the dog was at the center of something quietly, beautifully extraordinary. The mystery was no longer just about a well-behaved pet. It was about the magic that seemed to follow in their footsteps, repairing small breaks in the world before most people had even had their first cup of coffee. The strange, quiet peace of those morning walks shattered on a cold Tuesday in January. A frost had painted the grass white, and the air bit at any exposed skin. The neighborhood was still tucked under blankets when the first scream cut through the silence. It was a sound of pure animal terror that no one who heard it would ever forget. A young father, his face white as the frost, was running down his driveway in socks, screaming his son's name. The back gate was swinging open. His 2-year-old boy, a bundle of endless curiosity nicknamed Bumble, was gone. The man had only turned away for a minute to answer the phone. In that sliver of time, the toddler had wandered out into the vast, sleeping world. Panic, cold and sharp, spread faster than any news alert. Doors flew open. Neighbors, some in robes and slippers, spilled into the streets. The mother's cries were a heartbreaking sound that pulled people from their homes. Someone called the police. The officer who arrived, a steady man with kind eyes, immediately began organizing search parties. The backyards, the park, the streets, everyone fanned out, their breath-making clouds in the frigid air. Voices calling the little boy's name with increasing desperation. In the middle of this chaos, a familiar sight appeared. Mia, in her blue coat and striped hat, stepped out of her house with Sam. They began their walk as if it were any other day. The contrast was jarring. While adults ran and shouted, the girl and her dog moved with their usual quiet purpose down the sidewalk. Few people saw them and felt a flicker of irritation. How could she just go on her walk? Didn't she know a child was missing? But others, the ones who had been sharing the whispered stories, felt a different pull. They watched her, a fragile hope starting to beat in their chests. The girl didn't follow the search parties. She walked her usual route to the park, but then, at the big oak tree, she stopped. She knelt in the frost, placing both hands on Sam's back. The dog was different. He wasn't sitting calmly. His whole body was tense. His nose pointed not down the path, but towards the thick line of trees that led to the icy creek behind the neighborhood. A low, throbbing hum came from him, so deep it was more felt than heard. The police officer, directing searchers near the park entrance, noticed them. He saw the girl kneeling with her dog, away from the organized search. Concerned, he broke away and walked quickly toward them. The last thing they needed was another child getting lost or hurt. "Hey there," the officer said, his voice gentle but firm. "You need to head back home, sweetheart. It's not safe right now. We've got a little boy missing." Mia looked up. Her eyes weren't filled with the panic that was everywhere else. They were clear, focused, and deeply serious. She didn't seem scared of the officer. She seemed certain. "He's scared," Mia said, her voice small but steady in the cold air. "And he's very cold." She pointed a mittened hand toward the woods by the creek. "Sam knows." The officer blinked. "Your dog knows?" Before he could say another word, Sam moved. He didn't bark or whine. He took a few steps toward the woods, then looked back at Mia, then at the officer. It was a deliberate, intelligent look. An unmistakable follow-me. Something in the dog's eyes, in the girl's calm certainty, cut through the officer's training. It was irrational, but the feeling was too strong to ignore. He nodded. "Okay, show me." What followed was not a dog following a scent. Sam led them on a path no human would have taken. He pushed through thorny brambles that caught their coats, headed down a steep, slippery bank toward the sound of the half-frozen creek, and stopped at the mouth of a large concrete drainage pipe that went under the road. The opening was dark and forbidding, crusted with dirty ice. From inside the pipe, they heard it. A tiny, hiccuping sob. The sound of a child, exhausted and freezing. The officer's heart leapt into his throat. He shined his flashlight into the dark pipe. There, curled into a ball on the dry concrete just inside, was the little boy. His pajamas were wet at the cuffs, his face streaked with tears and dirt. He was shivering violently, clutching something to his chest for warmth. As the light fell on him, they saw it wasn't a toy. It was 3 tiny stray kittens, their fur matted, huddled against him. "Bumble?" the officer whispered, his professional composure cracking with relief. "Hey, buddy. We're here." The little boy looked up, confused and scared. Mia didn't wait. She crawled right into the pipe, ignoring the damp and the cold. She didn't grab for him. She just sat down beside him, a presence of calm. "You found the kittens," she said softly. "You are keeping them warm." That was very brave. The boy's sobs slowed. He looked at her. Mia slowly unzipped her coat, wrapped it around his small shoulders, and then carefully gathered the mewling kittens into her own sweater, holding them gently against her. It was then, in the bright beam of the officer's flashlight in the dim pipe, that he saw it. As Mia shifted, Sam nudged forward to lick the little boy's hand. The light caught the dog's neck perfectly. Where his collar should have sat, the officer saw the thick fur part for a second. Beneath the fur, there was no skin. There was a smooth metallic surface, a panel with a faint, glowing seam. It was the gray of polished stone, utterly unlike anything living. It shimmered for one fleeting second, before the fur settled back into place. The officer froze. He stared. His brain tried to reject what his eyes had just seen. A machine? A robot? But the dog's warmth, its breath making fog in the cold air, the intelligent worry in its eyes as it nuzzled the child. Sam looked right at him. In that look, there was no animal instinct. There was a deep, quiet awareness, an understanding that a secret had been seen. The dog gave a slow, deliberate blink, as if to say, yes, and now, please help the children. The officer, his hands trembling slightly, not from the cold, but from the world tilting on its axis, focused on his duty. He radioed for an ambulance, his voice surprisingly steady. He helped Mia and the boy, now wrapped in her coat and holding the kittens, out of the pipe. As they emerged into the weak morning light, a cheer went up from the search party that had gathered nearby. The mother rushed forward, tears of joy streaming down her face, grabbing her son in a crushing hug, but the officer stood back. He watched as the little boy was passed to his parents. He watched Mia, now shivering in her sweater, still cradling the kittens. And he watched Sam, who pressed himself close to the girl's side, a loyal protector. The incredible, joyful miracle of the found child was all anyone could talk about. But for the officer, and for the few neighbors who had seen the focused determination of the girl and her dog leading the way, the story had a new, unbelievable layer. The secret wasn't just about strange good luck. It was walking on 4 legs, with warm breath and soft fur, and a hidden heart made of something no one could yet understand. The morning walk had just saved a life, and in doing so, had revealed a truth more astonishing than anyone could have dreamed. The warmth inside Mia's house felt heavy, not cozy. The officer, who had introduced himself as Officer Reed, sat at the kitchen table with a mug of tea he hadn't touched. Mia's father looked older than his years. His shoulders slumped as if carrying a great weight. Mia sat between them, her hands in her lap, one finger gently stroking Sam's head where he lay at her feet. The dog was perfectly still, but his eyes were open, watching everyone in the room. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock. The celebration outside, the sirens, the happy cries, the grateful tears of the little boy's family felt like a world away. In here, there was only the quiet before a truth was spoken. Officer Reed spoke first, his voice kind but filled with a bewildered honesty. "Mia," he said softly, "what I saw by the creek, it wasn't my eyes playing tricks, was it?" Mia looked at her father. He gave her a small, sad nod, giving her permission. She took a deep breath. "Sam isn't a dog," she said, the words simple and clear in the quiet kitchen. "Not like other dogs." And so the story unfolded, piece by piece. It wasn't a story of spies or aliens, but of love and loss. Mia's mother, she explained, wasn't away on a trip. She had passed away 2 years ago from a sudden, fierce illness. The neighborhood knew this in a vague way, but they hadn't known what she really did. Mia's mother had been a scientist, an engineer who worked not with big, loud machines, but with tiny, silent ones. Her greatest passion was creating technology that helped without hurting, that fixed things quietly. Sam was her last project, Mia's father said, his voice thick. She called him a biomechanical companion. She built him for Mia, for after, for when she wouldn't be here anymore. He explained that Sam's body was a miracle of engineering. He had a synthetic fur covering that felt real, a warming system that mimicked body heat, and a mind that was something beyond a computer. He was programmed with something Mia's mother called adaptive empathy. He could sense distress the high, frantic frequency of a lost child's cry, the sad, low signal of a missing pet, even the subtle signature of a lost object important to someone. Our walks. Mia continued, picking up the story. They weren't just walks. Mom called them calibration loops. She said every neighborhood has little breaks in it. Lost things. Scared things. Sadness that settles in places. Sam can feel those breaks. She described how Sam would scan their route every morning. The pauses by the old oak tree or the garden gate were him listening, pinpointing a signal. A lost cat here. A dropped wallet there. A deep worry in an old person's heart that made them forgetful. And then, Mia said, her voice gaining a little strength, we fix it. It was never anything big or showy. Mia's mother had taught her that the best help was the kind that wasn't noticed. So Mia was the guide. Sam would identify a problem, and Mia would help him solve it in a way that looked like chance. She'd suggest looking in a certain bush for a lost toy. She'd nudge a scared animal toward home with a calm thought. She'd place a found object where it could be easily seen. Sam had tiny, delicate tools in his paw's miniature greepers. A subtle guidance beacon, a cleaner that could freshen a lost item all hidden under his soft pads. My job, Mia said, looking at Officer Reed, is to make it look normal. To make sure no one gets scared of him. Mom said his job was to help, and my job was to keep him secret so he could help. Officer Reed listened, his police officer's mind wrestling with the impossible reality of it. A robot dog? But looking at Sam, seeing the intelligent understanding in those eyes, hearing the love in Mia's voice, it wasn't a scary sci-fi story. It was a daughter keeping her mother's dream alive. The little boy today. Officer Reed prompted. Sam felt his fear, Mia said. It was the strongest signal he ever felt. Really loud and really cold. We had to go off the path. I knew it was okay, because you were there. I knew an adult would find him if we showed the way. Mia's father put a hand on her shoulder. She's been so brave, carrying this all by herself. I just wanted her to have a piece of her mother, to not feel so alone. They showed Officer Reed more. Mia's father brought out a small, smooth tablet. When he touched it, a soft interface glowed to life. It wasn't filled with complicated code, but with simple, loving notes. Asterisk Sam's core directive, Mia's well-being. Asterisk, remember, sweetheart. Small kindnesses make big echoes. There were videos of Mia's mother, her voice warm, explaining to a younger Mia how to interpret Sam's gentle hums, what the different flickers in his eyes meant. Watching the video, Officer Reed saw it wasn't about technology. It was a mother, knowing her time was short, building a guardian for her child, and a purpose for them to share. Sam wasn't a machine. He was a last, beautiful letter of love. The officer sat back in his chair, letting out a long breath. The initial shock was melting away, replaced by a deep, profound respect. All those little things in the neighborhood. The found cat, the drone. Mia nodded. We just wanted to help. Like Mom would have. The secret was out. But as Officer Reed looked from Mia's hopeful, anxious face to her father's tired one, and down to Sam, who thumped his tail once softly on the floor, he understood something. This wasn't a crime to be reported. This was a fragile, beautiful truth to be protected. He made a decision right then. He spoke not as an officer, but as a neighbor, as a father himself. This stays in this room, he said firmly. For now. The world out there isn't always kind to things it doesn't understand. They might want to take Sam away to study him. They would scare Mia. They would miss the point entirely. He looked at Sam. You saved a life today. That's all anyone needs to know. The rest. He shook his head. The rest is your family's business. The relief that washed over Mia and her father was visible. The heavy weight in the room lightened. The secret was no longer a burden for a little girl to carry alone. It was now a secret shared, a truth held safely by a few who understood it wasn't about what Sam was made of, but what he was made for, to be a companion, a protector, and a living reminder that love can build the most incredible things, sometimes even with 4 paws and a gentle, thumping tail. The story of how the quiet girl and her dog led the officer to the missing toddler was the talk of the town, but only for a little while. In a world filled with new news every day, the spotlight moved on. The little boy's family, of course, thought Mia and Sam were heroes. They brought over a huge basket of cookies and a bright red best dog collar, which Mia accepted with a shy smile. Sam wore the collar once, for a photo, his tail wagging politely. But underneath the surface of the ordinary neighborhood, something had shifted. The secret was no longer a perfect, hidden thing. It was a seed that had been planted in the hearts of a few people. And instead of withering, it began to grow in the most unexpected way. Officer Reed became a regular, quiet visitor. He'd stop by not to investigate, but to check in. He'd sit with Mia's father on the porch, talking in low voices. Sometimes he'd ask Mia gentle questions about her walks, not as a policeman, but as someone who was genuinely curious. Did Sam seem extra interested in the old lot on Cedar Street today? He might ask, and Mia would nod, explaining she'd heard the faint cries of a trapped animal there. The next day, Officer Reed would just happen to take a stroll that way and find a way to prop open a broken board in a fence, letting a scared raccoon family escape. The retired man, Mr. Henderson, from his porch watch, now saw with new eyes. He noticed the precise way Sam moved, the way his head would tilt at an angle no biological dog would hold for so long. One morning, as Mia passed, he didn't just wave. He said, "Your mother would be so proud of you both, you know." Mia stopped, her eyes wide. Mr. Henderson just gave a knowing wink and sipped his coffee. No more needed to be said. He became a lookout. If he saw strangers or news vans nosing around, he'd make a point of watering his lawn, a signal for Mia to take a different route. The boy with the drone became Sam's biggest fan. He'd ride his bike alongside them sometimes, not too close, just within earshot. He'd talk to Mia about technology, about sensors and programming, in a way that wasn't suspicious, just excited. He started a neighborhood watch club that was really just an excuse to map out areas where lost things often turned up, subtly creating a guide for Mia and Sam's calibration loops. The busy mother, who had always rushed, now often made a point of being at her car when Mia walked by. One morning, she handed Mia a bag of leftover yarn, For any little creatures who might need a soft nest, she said, her meaning clear. She didn't ask questions. She just wanted to help in her own way. The neighborhood didn't become a place of whispered conspiracies. It became a place of quiet understanding. The morning walks continued, but they were no longer a solitary mission. They were a thread that gently pulled the community together. People started paying better attention, not just to Mia and Sam, but to each other. They'd notice a loose board on a fence and fix it, thinking of trapped animals. They'd return a lost item to a porch before Mia even had the chance. They became active partners in the small, silent work of repair that Mia changed too. The weight of the secret was gone. She walked taller. She still didn't chatter, but she smiled more. She'd sometimes stop and actually talk to Mr. Henderson about the weather, or accept a homemade cookie from the grateful young mother. The walks were no longer a heavy responsibility she carried alone for her mother. They were a shared gift her mother had left for all of them. One spring morning, something happened that sealed this new understanding. The elderly woman from the cottage with the cat was planting early flowers when she stumbled and fell in her garden. She wasn't badly hurt, but she was stuck, unable to get up, hidden by her tall rosebush. She called out, but her voice was weak. Mia and Sam were on their return loop. Sam stopped dead. He let out a sharp, urgent chime that Mia had never heard before. He pulled gently at her sleeve, leading her off the path, through the woman's open gate, and around to the back garden. There they found her. Mia didn't panic. She said, "Stay still. We'll get help," and simply said, "Sam, get Mr. Henderson." Sam sprinted to the edge of the property and let out a series of barks that were oddly precise, almost like a code. Mr. Henderson, recognizing the unusual sound from his porch, came immediately. Within minutes, help was there. At the woman's kitchen table later, with a cup of sweet tea in her hands, she held Mia's small hand. "You and that wonderful dog," she said, her eyes watery. "You're like guardian angels of this street." Mia shook her head. "We're not angels," she said honestly. It's what my mom taught us to do. To look, to listen." And that was the truth the neighborhood finally learned. The incredible secret wasn't about a robot dog. That was just the how. The real secret was the why. It was about a love so deep it built a guardian. It was about a child so brave she became a keeper of kindness. It was about a community learning that miracles aren't always loud and dramatic. Sometimes they are quiet, furry, and walk among you every morning at 6:15. The walks never stopped. But now, Mia wasn't just a girl with a dog. She was a girl with a friend, leading a friend, watched over by friends. Sam, in his red best dog collar, trotted beside her, no longer a secret to be hidden, but a silent, steady promise kept. A promise from a mother, carried out by a daughter, and protected by a street full of people who had learned that the most ordinary things, a wave from a porch, a bag of yarn, a watchful eye, could be part of something truly extraordinary. And in that simple, daily rhythm, the memory of Mia's mother lived on, not as a ghost of the past, but as a gentle, repairing force in the heart of their present.